Sephra's World. My name is Sephra, and this is my world. And today we're going to have another episode of Writers Behaving Badly. Now, I know I could actually do an episode a day of writers behaving badly because writers, much like actors or anyone else, there's always some that behave badly in the genre or in the field of writing, and that's fine. I try to only pick cases or circumstances where we can all learn from or that I feel is important to the horror genre, which is my main genre. I also don't want my channel to be really negative. I want to have a positive channel here on YouTube, which is why I do horoscopes and I tell you about the moon phases and I get excited about Star Wars and all these things. My idea of these videos is not to bum people out or to, don't do this, don't do that. It's to inform and educate or just to have fun. However, we consider reading books and things like that fun. We consider conventions fun. However, the current climate here in 2019, I'm recording this in March 2019, certainly our political climate and our social climate has taken a very sharp turn over the last couple of years. And growing from a place of concern has now resulted in the emergence of what I consider social justice warriors. Now, in the past, I used to consider myself a social justice warrior, and boy, that is hard to say. I guess that's why people just use the SJW initials because it's hard to actually say the real words. Now, I'm someone who has always believed in fairness and equality, and I live in Canada where we have a little more of that than the United States does. We're a little more tolerant here, we're a little more open-minded, but not that much more when you really look at the big landscape. I march for women's rights. I march for legalization of marijuana. I march against wars. I used to march against the nuclear powers and all these sorts of things. I've spent my whole life fighting causes and, you know, writing things about causes. Sometimes I bring political stuff into my work a little bit, but as a writer, I'm more interested in entertaining. Now, there are two things I want to talk about today. The first one is a continuing look at Bizarro Con because this is the gift that keeps on giving, or really it's not giving at all, because now Bizarro Con, which is a convention for Bizarro lovers, whether they're readers, writers, people working in that field, the new the next Bizarro Con has indeed been canceled. They pulled the plug on it a day or two ago because not enough people have signed up for the next one, which would be in November. And of course, this is all a resulting scuttlebutt fallout from all the stuff that went down from this year's Bizarro Con, which I actually did cover on my channel here on Writers Behaving Badly. Um, Basically, someone read a piece from a book that was being published by a Bizarro Con publisher, and at the not urging, but his editor's like, yeah, read from that book at this convention, and this is what people do. So this young man read his passage and acted out a distasteful. Of course, planes go over just when I do recordings. But the young man did a distasteful, according to those who were actually in the room, presentation, an art piece, or whatever. And instead of just people taking him aside and saying, that wasn't appropriate, or instead of people booing him off the stage as per the rules, people just sat there and watched it go down and then decided to take offense, a few days later on social media, and then dragged a bunch of other people into this, thereby people losing jobs, shutting down all these things. And so the creator of Bizarro Con, I'm trying not to use names here, she decided to revamp Bizarro Con and put various perimeters in place to protect Bizarro Con from having these instances happen again or anymore. And so she decided to have, running like safe spaces for writers and all these kinds of things, um, educating people running the convention and so on. However, now the convention is pretty much destroyed, even though it had been running quite well for many years. So that happened because several people who weren't even at the convention got very vocal about what they think um, should happen or not happen at this particular convention, even though they weren't even involved or there. And so the loudness of the social justice warriors have now impacted this genre significantly. And though I'm all for, women getting ahead and diversity and safe spaces and all that, this was not the way to do it. This was not the way to do it. And now Bizarro Con is collapsing, and possibly the Bizarro publishers. I don't know because I'm not in that field. But I did hear that I read the post that Bizarro Con has been canceled, and it's a direct result, but not in the post, but in my observations, it's a direct result of people meddling in none of their goddamn business. Now we move on to Stokercon, which is coming up very soon. Stokercon is a convention run by the Horror Writers Association, and they I'm a member of the Horror Writers Association. I've been a member for, wow, like maybe 30 years, 29 years perhaps, and I've been running the Ontario chapter up here in Toronto for maybe 25 years, over 20 years. At any rate, I personally will not be attending StokerCon this year, nor did I attend the one last year, and it sucks. I don't want to go. I just don't have the financial means to go, and so I'm not going to be attending. I would love to go. Hey, if you want to buy me a ticket and put me up, I will go. You know, anyways, so now at StokerCon, they have a million panels, and their idea is to educate horror writers, and they have panels for all levels of horror writers and people who doubt, editors, movie makers, and so on. So they have different levels of panels, so from just getting started people to people who've been working in the business forever. So one of the panels that was going to happen this year was called Men in Horror, and it was a tongue-in-cheek panel, which was obvious by the panel description, which I don't have right now, and then all the places, it's gone because of what happened. So again, the same kind of group of people took offense at this Men in Horror panel, and even though it was pointed out to them that it was a tongue-in-cheek Men in Horror panel, because we all know that we're trying to, we just had Women in Horror Month and all this. We're trying to shine the light, more awareness that, everyone's right in horror. These people decided to harass the StokerCon programmers until they destroyed the panel. Now, what was interesting to me was the panel sounded really good. The panel was prepared by Kathy Koja and was going to have John Skip. And if any of you have ever seen a panel with Skip in it, you knew it was going to be funny. You knew it was going to be entertaining, and you knew that Men in Horror would have been a joke because that's what Skip does. John Skip, I met John Skip for the very first time at my very first NeCon, which is a convention in Rhode Island, and that must have been about 30 years ago when I first met him. And he's a decent human being. He's a bit of a hippie, and he tends to look for the best in people. I know he had a lot of really rough years, but I'd say like the last 10 or 15 years, he's been very much trying to listen to people, to be that helpful person, to try and understand different people's viewpoints and try to make things happy and good for everyone. So I knew that if he was doing a Men in Horror panel, that this was his mandate. And then Kathy Koja, like, oh my God, like Kathy Koja is to me one of my idols. Back in the 90s, the women in horror that I wanted to be like, it was Kathy Koja and Poppy Z. Bright and Nancy Collins, Nancy Baker, all these wonderful, Yvonne Navarro, these women working in the field, and a lot of them were published by Abyss Books. And I wanted to be an Abyss book writer because of Kathy Koja and Poppy Zebright and some of these other women I aspired to write like. And so to know that Kathy Koja is hosting a panel with John Skip is pretty amazing. And that would have been like so amazing to see. And again, they would be talking about how to bring up the women. So Skip was dragged through the mud on some threads about, how dare he do a men in horror panel at Stokercon when in fact no one was listening to the reality of what this panel was. And some things happened, and the panel was changed. The panel was canceled because of the same people that came down on Bizarro Con. Now they've come down on the HWA, and their squeaky wheelness has now canceled the Men in Horror panel, and they've now put a different panel in its place. I'm not sure if it's still Skip and Kathy running it. I have no idea because I didn't go look because I'm too angry. I just know that I saw Skip post, and I'm just reading off my computer here. He had something to say on someone else's thread, someone else who was upset about that this all went down, and she posted a big long post about all the things that went down, and a lot of people, like over, last time I looked, there were over 80 comments on this thread, and Skip chimed in, and he said, a little bit of what he said was, the fact is that the panel Kathy had planned and invited me to join would have been awesome. And inside the joke, we were going to discuss all manner of important things, like the importance of women and men working together instead of apart, breaking down the barriers until things like women in horror panels, and I want to add month, were no longer necessary, and discussing strategies by which this may be done. And yes, that's what he wanted. That was the goal of the Men in Horror panel. But once again, the social justice warriors had to jump on and rattle their cages and scream and yell and bully the people in charge until it was taken down because they weren't listening. And so here we go. I see this all the time now, and it's really sickening that people, and I know the people that I'm calling social justice warriors, I know they mean well. I really do, because I know a lot of them in real life. I know they mean well, but they are not doing anyone a service by acting like this. In this case with the StokerCon, there's no way that panel should have been canceled, and it would have been like the most awesome panel. I'm sure there were other people on it besides Skip and Kathy, but just watching Skip Spector, John Skip, and Kathy Koja running a panel would have just been so friggin' awesome, don't you think? Don't you think? And yeah, I said Spectre, but because John Skip came from Skip and Spectre, they were the original splatter punks, along with a few others, David Scow and Clyde Barker and some others, Phil Nutman, and they created the splatterpunk genre. And now Skip mostly works in the bizarro genre. I guess he's creator of genres, but he's like the godfather of punk and all this stuff, right? And yeah, it's really a shame. And, it reminds me of what's happening on a lot of the Star Wars channels on YouTube, and actually just YouTube in general, where a lot of people, like for instance, I've mentioned before, I watched a lot of Star Wars channels and had subscribed to many about a year ago. But now those channels have gotten so hateful and so political. I unscribe to all of them. I don't watch any of them anymore. Sometimes I'll peek in to see if they've changed, and they're not. And what I'm finding happening, not just in the genre, not just writers behaving badly, not just Star Wars, but in North American society at least, I can't speak for the rest of the world, we're really getting into this crazy place where you're not allowed to disagree with anyone. You either agree with someone or you're sent to the cornfield, and that's it. There's no room for discussion anymore. People are not allowed to make mistakes, like the young man at Bizarro Con who did the ill-advised reading, he wasn't allowed to make a mistake. He had to be perfect, but no, now he's boycotted, his book's canceled, he's scum, he's off Facebook, his name is mud. Why? Because he made a mistake. And it wasn't even a mistake because he was encouraged by others who may have known better or not. And as far as I'm concerned, performance art is performance art, and it keeps being blown out of context. But so, no one's allowed to make a mistake anymore. No one's allowed to voice an opinion that's different than yours, or you're all bad, you're blocked. You're blocked on Facebook, you're an asshole, you're a jerk. You may disagree with someone, and then a whole tribe of other people will pounce on you. I don't agree in the pile-ons on Facebook, on Twitter, in real life. It's just crazy. People are allowed to have different opinions. People are allowed to have different conversations. And let's say the men in horror panel had gone on at I want to say World Horror, but it doesn't exist, Stokercon. If the Men in Horror panel had gone on at Stokercon and the people attending had seen what it really was, then they can make an opinion. Whether it was like, oh yeah, they shouldn't have had that, like, oh my God, like it was so, it was all men doing man things, or but when they would see and be educated and learn something from a panel of professional authors who've been working in this field for 20, 30 years, I think it would have been a whole different story, but they weren't allowed to even go further because they were boycotted and bullied, and it was shut down before it even happened. And this is the shame of what's going on these days, is the right to free speech. Where is it? There isn't any. And yeah, sure, I know a bunch of people will unfriend me for this. I've lost over 1,000 friends in the last year. I'm not sure why, but I'm sure it's because I have an opinion and it doesn't match everyone's. I'm not a social justice warrior, but I'm also not a racist asshole. I'm not, I'm in between. And I think most of us are in between. And there's room for conversation. But a conversation isn't, this is right, this is wrong, and because this is happening, that must mean this, this, and this. No, this is happening and that's what's happening. It doesn't necessarily mean this, this, and this, and you have to have the conversations. So that's kind of where I'm at on the writers behaving badly thing right now. I keep thinking of the saying, get woke, go broke. There's too much wokeness happening. I'm tired of it all. I'm tired of people not allowed to have opinions. I'm tired of being shut down because your opinion might be different. And I'm not talking about Nazis and racists and all. I'm just talking about everyday people doing their lives and just trying to have some fun. We're in the entertainment field, and let's get back to entertaining. And on one more little bit is, let's separate the art from the artist, because you know what, most artists are crazy fucks. We are, most of us are insane. Most of us do not lead lives that would be a prime example of how to live a life, and that's why we write compelling and interesting books, or paint interesting work, or make interesting movies, because there is that whole nonconformity thing happening, and there are different levels of it. And unless you're actually walking in someone's shoes, you don't know their experience. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what their true moral values are. And a piece of art may not reflect the artist. And that's why you need to separate the art from the artist. And let's just, enjoy our art and stop worrying about micromanaging everyone else's lives. Get your own life together, get your own shit together. And also, if you have a trigger, another word I absolutely hate, if you're triggered by something, it doesn't mean everyone else is. You know what? We all have our own experiences. What triggers me doesn't trigger someone else. And I have a lot of triggers too. I get very upset by a lot of things, but I don't go out and demand everyone boycott these situations and so on, because my experience is not your experience. And so we need to continue on and enjoy the ability to have freedom of expression. And yes, we should point out the rights from wrongs, but the self-appointed gatekeepers in the horror genre right now, I think, you need to think a little more about what your end game is. Because right now, much like what's happening in the United States with everyone being on one side or the other, you have to pick a side. There seems to be no middle. Now we're starting to splinter in the horror genre into this. And you know what? We're already in the ghetto in horror. We're already the lowest rung on the literature totem pole. Yes, I'm saying all these words we're not allowed to say anymore, but I don't, I'm old. I'm not sure what other words to say right now, but I need to do some research and get woke. But we are already at the bottom, right? Horror is already looked down upon, frowned upon, and then when we're all infighting, that is not helping anyone. And when the young people are trying to make a change, that's fantastic. And I'm glad you're trying to make a change. But you also have to consider those of us over 50 or 60, and I'm not saying old boys club and chauvinism and all that, but we come from a different perspective and a different place. And you have to respect our values and opinions, and also the fact that a lot of these people, like John Skip and Kathy Koja, have been working in this field forever. And they paved the way in many ways so that you had a genre where you could speak your mind, not to boycott people and to slam people down, and not to be gatekeepers for your own very political specific beliefs, but it's a place for all of us. Okay, so that's my writers behaving badly this Thursday morning. Happy spring equinox. Happy super worm moon. It's the super worm moon. We're still in the feeling the effects of that, and that may also be why everyone's losing their minds again. Anyways, thank you for watching, and let me know what you think about all of this. Did I go too far with my video? Am I the asshole now because I'm speaking my opinion about what I'm seeing from a distance with people? Some people I know, some people I don't know. And yeah, I'm just pretty upset that that would have been a cool panel at Stokercon. And I'm also very upset that Bizarro Con, which, like I've said a million times, I know nothing about Bizarro and I've never been to a Bizarro Con, but I'm very upset that now that has been affected by all this stuff as well. All right, have a good day.